Hi, everybody. I hope all of you are well and safe. In this video, I will be discussing Patrick Thompson's article, Gender Treachery. He starts the article by recalling that one of his first critical insights into the structure of sex and gender categories occurred during his senior year in high school. The insult of choice among male jocks was girl. So if a male student was annoying or made a mistake during an athletic event, they were called girl. It even eventually became a term of greeting for the male jocks when they spoke to each other. This was a conservative Christian institution, according to Hopkins, so no profanity was allowed. The word girl was a kind of non-profane substitute for derogatory terms for homosexuals. It signifies not male in the sense of a failure of a gendered standard of behavior. It was meant to attack a male's identity and illustrates how important gender is to the concept of oneself. Hopkins argues that all members of society have their very sense of self heavily determined by their identifications as a particular gender. What it means to be a person is what it means to be a girl or a boy, a man or woman. Identity is fundamentally relational. For a man to be a man, he must possess a certain number of characteristics that one can see that he is not a woman. These characteristics include the sexual conquest of women, heading a nuclear family, siring children, competition with other men, independence, behavioral autonomy, rationality, aggressiveness, strict emotional control, obsession with success and status, a certain way of walking and talking, and so on and so on. Any threat to socially determined gender categories is interpreted as a threat to personal identity. A gender traitor is anyone who violates the rules of gender identity. Someone who doesn't fit neatly into either the main category, someone who doesn't fit neatly into the man category or the woman category is committing gender treachery. This can occur as homosexuality, bisexuality, cross-dressing, or feminist activism. Hopkins discusses the debate around the term homophobia and whether it is the best term for what it describes. Because it has the suffix phobia, some theorists argue that it sounds like a psychiatric category. Some argue that the term heterosexism is a better term to describe the phenomenon. Though heterosexism doesn't possess the emotional impact of homophobia, Hopkins argues that both terms are appropriate in context. Heterosexism is the appropriate term for describing why all TV couples are straight. Openly gay or lesbian candidates face difficulty in being elected to office, and so on. It is the assumption of our society that the normal way to be is either a heterosexual male or female, and that anything else is abnormal and wrong. Homophobia is the irrational fear. Homophobia is the irrational hatred of homosexuality or homosexuals. Hopkins argues that heterosexism is a necessary precursor to homophobia, so that the backdrop for homophobia is the binary. That means two, division between heterosexual, which is good, and homosexual, which is bad. So heterosexism is responsible for the production of homophobia. Hopkins then examines three theories about why men react so strongly to the mere presence of gay men. he will reject each of these theories as being the best explanation of this phenomenon. But he thinks they're all important, and he thinks that they're all explanatory of some men. The first theory he calls the Repression Hypothesis. This is the view that people who are homophobic are actually repressed homosexuals. They put down and maybe even commit violence against homosexuals because they're trying to cover up for their own homosexuality. Hopkins argues that while this may be accurate for many men, it's not accurate for all. He thinks homophobia is not as simple as this. The second theory is what he calls the Irrationality or Ignorance Hypothesis. This theory holds that homophobia is an irrational fear based on ignorance and resulting in social training. The homophobic male is brought up by parents who are homophobic and who are often saying derogatory things about homosexuals. The child then learns to have this irrational fear as well. Hopkins argues that such a simple analysis excludes much of the experience of the homophobe. Being homophobic is not so dysfunctional as it may seem. Homophobic activity carries with it certain rewards and powers to influence others. For instance, homophobia allows men to win approval from peers. Homophobia allows heterosexual men to win approval from peers and authority figures, protects them from becoming the target of other homophobes, and allows them to protect and reaffirm their own identity. The third hypothesis about why some men react so strongly to the presence of gay men is the political response hypothesis. Under this explanation, heterosexual men believe that homosexuals pose a genuine political threat to heterosexuals. They think homosexuals intend to eliminate heterosexual privilege so that homophobia then is a rational. Hopkins thinks that while there are some radical separatist lesbians and gays, this hypothesis only accounts for some homophobes. In actuality, many homophobes view gays and lesbians as politically, morally, and economically insignificant. Hopkins concludes by noting that in a binary gender system, to be unmasculine means to be feminine. The homophobe dismisses homosexuals as not really human, so homosexuals don't merit the response given to genuine identities. Hopkins says that the only way to ensure that homophobia is eliminated is to eliminate this binary division itself, meaning heterosexuality, as a norm. Thank you for your time and for your attention.